something that happened to me earlier this year. One night, my husband and I were on the porch smoking a cigarette around 9 p.m. We live far out in the woods, right off a stretch of highway that's between two interstate exits. We were looking up at the stars, enjoying the quiet atmosphere of the crickets and sitting around the fire. I heard something and I shushed my husband so that we could hear more clearly. We were able to hear a woman screaming like nothing I had heard before. It sounded like she was getting murdered. In between blood-chilling screams, she was yelling out, "Help me! Help me!" I looked at my husband and we were both really freaked out. The more she screamed, the closer she was getting to our house. I could eventually see a figure running along the grassy median area of the highway, making their way closer to the part of the highway that was in front of our house. Our house is a good way back from the highway since we have a long driveway, but not far enough that we couldn't see the highway. If we could see her, that meant that she could see us, especially with the fire blazing. We could still see the highway perfectly fine due to the house across from us who still had their Christmas lights up. I threw my cig into the fire and went back near the doorway of the house to grab my phone to call 911. My husband ran past me inside to get his jacket and shoes. I told him not to go out there, but he ignored me and got dressed anyways. As soon as he was inside the house, I saw a red car barrel up the road and pull over next to where the lady was at. With her being in the median, there was still a stretch of grass between her and the car because of a ditch that was basically uncrossable for a car. There was a man driving. I couldn't see what he looked like, and I only heard his voice. He was yelling that he was going to kill her, and he called her many degrading words I won't repeat. It looked like he was throwing stuff at her out the window, maybe clothes or trash. I couldn't tell too well. As soon as the screaming woman saw him pull over, she started running straight towards our yard. By that time, I was already on the phone with the police officers, but as I said, I live out in the woods pretty far from the nearest town, so it would take them a while to get there. My husband, who had finished putting on shoes and a jacket inside, ran into the yard towards her. He asked if she was okay, and she said that she had gotten a ride home from this guy, and halfway down the road he started acting really creepy. He refused to let her out when she wanted him to, and kept driving with her in the car. At one point, she had glanced into the back seat and saw a roll of duct tape. Fearing for her life, she jumped out of the moving car and just started running down the road screaming for help. My husband brought her into the house and called the police again, having gathered more information that I wasn't able to give them when I called. They told him to stay on the line with them until an officer showed up. Inside now, in the full light, we were able to see the woman, and her face looked horrible. She was red and bleeding in a couple of spots, with road rash from when she had jumped out. She also said that the man in the car had hit her before she was able to escape. We locked our door and stood together near the window waiting for the police to show up, while my husband gave updates and answered questions on the phone with 911. Basically, he was just telling them that the red car was still parked on the highway and that we didn't see the man anywhere. I was trying my best to stay calm and care for the injured woman when there was a loud bang on our door. The man outside was there yelling, "I know you're in there. I saw you running," and he mentioned that the people inside can't protect her. I shouted through the door that he needed to leave our property, and if he was smart, he would get in his car and drive off before the police showed up. The answer he gave me was not what I was expecting at all, and probably the worst response imaginable. He yelled, "Go ahead, call the police. They won't be here in time." Then he started to pound and kick at our door, trying to break it down. The woman was freaking out and crying, saying, "Help me, please help me," over and over again. I ran to the kitchen and got a large knife just in case. We had a huge solid iron door, but our windows were easily breakable. If he wanted to get in badly enough, he certainly could. My husband went to our bedroom and got his gun when a squad car pulled up in the yard finally, with two more following behind it. The man took off on foot running. Some of the cops tended to the woman and got her home safely. The other group of officers searched the woods for the man and finally found him after 2 hours of searching. Needless to say, it turned out to be a scary, eventful night, and I'm glad the cops showed up before the man thought about breaking through our windows. At that point, my husband might have been forced to shoot the man, but I'm glad it didn't escalate to that point, because it would have been a very traumatic experience for everyone involved. This happened to me in the fall of 2020 during the COVID pandemic. My friend, who for the story I will call Jay, and I were on our way from New York to Michigan. We were going to do a couple of flooring jobs and also scout some potential properties to renovate and flip. We were using his work truck for the trip, which was a Ford F-150. We decided to leave in the evening and make the drive all night to get to our destination. Some of our trip was on a 2-lane highway that passes through the mountains of Pennsylvania. The highway is far from safe, with elevated mountain terrain with constant turns, and it snakes around a lot. Anyways, I was driving while Jay tried to get some sleep in the passenger seat. I stopped at a gas station to refuel and ran into the store really quick to get some drinks and snacks for the road. It was a little past midnight, and I noticed one other car refueling a few pumps away from us. It was a red or burgundy SUV, but I paid it no attention as I ran back to the truck. Fast forward 30 minutes later, and I was cruising in the left lane going 90 miles per hour. I noticed headlights behind us, and it was the same red SUV from the gas station. I first didn't think much of anything about it, but it dawned on me that this guy had been following me since the gas station. I decided to do a quick test to see if I was being tailed or not. Since I was going 90 miles per hour consistently, I slowed down to 70 and waited to see if the red SUV would pass me. The guy in the car also slowed down with me now, and I was on alert of being followed. I woke up Jay and told him of the situation. Jay is an ex-Army Ranger who is a lot more vigilant than me, and also crazier. Immediately he said, "That's the car from the gas station. I noticed the guy was looking at you extra hard when you passed by him." Jay, being who he was, wanted me to do more tests to figure out what was going on. He told me to switch lanes, so I did, and immediately the red SUV did so as well. Jay advised me to pull over to the shoulder of the highway and come to a complete stop, which I did. And once again, this psycho who was following me slowed down and parked behind us. Jay was fairly confident that this man had a firearm on him, because of the fact that he was confident enough to pull up behind us on the side of the highway. I quickly took stock with what we had in the truck that we could use as weapons. We had a hatchet and a machete, and each of us had a folding knife with us, but no firearms. Jay instructed me next to pull out quickly and gas the car back up to 90 miles per hour. I pulled off the shoulder and stayed in the right lane as I pressed down hard on the gas, but the SUV stayed right behind us now. Jay wanted me to brake check the guy so that he would crash into the back of us, then charge the SUV with a machete and a hatchet and hope for the best. That was very hardcore for me, and I told Jay we weren't going to do that. At this point, the man behind us wasn't an active threat yet, but if he tried to ram our truck or shoot us, then it would be a different story. I asked Jay if he could think of any other way that we could get this guy away from us. Jay looked around inside the truck and grabbed a high-powered handheld spotlight. He opened the back window of the truck and tried to get a good look at the guy. He turned on the spotlight, and I guess it shouldn't have been too surprising, but the guy's front windows were heavily tinted, so we couldn't get a look of his face. I had an idea, and I quickly swerved over to the left lane. As I did that, Jay turned on the spotlight again, hoping to see the man through his side windows. I briefly turned my head at the same time that Jay shined the light at the side of the SUV. For like 3 seconds we had him illuminated, and I will never forget the look of this guy. He was tall, at least 6.5 feet, because he was hunched over the steering wheel. If I had to describe what a crazy serial killer would look like, it was this guy. Just crazy hair, crazy eyes, and the most disheveled face I've ever seen. The light and darkness could have made it look worse than it was, but this guy looked very dangerous. Once the man saw that I wasn't alone, and he knew what we looked like, he exited off the highway at a truck stop rest area. To this day, me and Jay get into a debate about whether I should have brake checked the guy or not. He's under the impression that the guy was a serial killer, and that he would just end up finding another victim. I still stand on the side where purposely getting into an accident with a guy like that could go wrong in so many ways, and that it wasn't worth it. However, I agree with Jay that this guy's intentions were evil. Probably robbery at the minimum, kidnapping and murder at the worst. I'm just glad that we never had to find out, and I hope that nobody else has to deal with him alone. It was a cool night in the fall, around 1 a.m., and I was driving on a lonely backwoods highway in northeastern Wisconsin. It's a quiet road, barely used except for farm equipment and occasional trucks. It was close to my home, and I was out for a late-night drive listening to music, which I did often. I was heading down that long stretch of highway that cuts through some swampy woods. There are deep ditches on either side, and when it gets dark, you have to keep your eye out for deer. I'd driven down this road many times, and tonight was no different until I hit a patch of brown fog. It wasn't thick, but enough to make the headlights bounce off it and mess with the visibility for a few seconds. As I drove through the fog, I kept my attention focused on the ditch nearest to me on the side of the road, to make sure that I could see a deer through the fog. As the fog cleared, I saw something that creeped me out. There was a figure crawling out of one of the ditches. I remember thinking it was a person, but something was off. It was moving in a strange way. It was crawling with no legs, just digging itself out of the ditch. The way it moved wasn't natural. It was more of a spasm than a crawl. It happened very quickly, and just as I passed, it disappeared. I couldn't make sense of what I had seen. I wasn't tired, drunk, or anything out of my normal state of mind. I told myself it was probably just my eyes playing tricks on me in the fog or something. For days after, I kept thinking about it. I'd drive around the long way home from work to avoid that road. It wasn't even that far from my house, but I couldn't bring myself to go back down it. Then, a week or two later, I was working out in the fields with my boss. We had to drive down that road to get to the field that we were plowing. I'd been dreading it, but I didn't have a choice. On the way there, I figured I'd mention to my boss what I had seen. Maybe he'd have some logical explanation since he drove down this road so often as well. So I told him about what I saw, the figure with no legs crawling out of the ditch, moving in that weird, jerky way. He stopped for a second and gave me this look, like he was trying to figure out if I was messing with him. Finally, he said, "You know, there was a farmer around here years ago who died driving his tractor down the road." My boss explained to me that one night the farmer lost control and rolled his tractor into that same ditch I had pointed out. He had gotten crushed under it and died. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't heard anything about that, but it made sense in a way. I didn't ask my boss for any more details because I didn't want to know more or think about it anymore. I'm pretty sure that I saw the farmer's ghost crawling up out of the ditch late that night.